Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar featuring Irfan Ali, creator and founder of Minigor. And the topic today will be the quantum era, the Silicon Dragon, and the Jade, Jadugadh, China, physics, and CPEC. Now, before we get started, I would like to go over a few instructions so you know how to participate in today's events. You have joined the presentation listening through your computer speaker system by default. If you were to prefer to join over the telephone, just select telephone in the audio section of your control panel and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenters by typing your questions into the questions box of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time and we will address them at the end of the presentation. Our agenda for today, our team and vision. Obviously, I've mentioned that our keynote speaker is Irfan Ali Khan. We will follow that with a Q&A with him, and then we will end it towards a future webinar sneak preview. Now introducing our team. First of all, Zafar Salim. He is the head of marketing. Sarah Mashkoor, she's the advisor. Dawood Yamin, an advisor. Tasneem Hakim, also an advisor. This handsome guy, me, Taha Aziz, I'm the business analyst, and Zahir Aziz, who is our founder. Our sponsors for today, Nets International is a global partner for enterprise IT infrastructure and service provider network solutions. You can check them out at netsinfrastructureinternational.com. Our next sponsor is Edvon, is a developing STEAM and technology content and to disrupt the education system by making latest technologies and entrepreneurship a part of school curriculum. You can check them out at theedvolution.com. And now I would like to transition over to our moderator, Zahir Aziz.
All right, thank you, Taha, and welcome everyone for joining our next webinar. Today we are very delighted to have Irfan Ali Khan with us. Before we get started, I just wanted to share with you as to why we do this. Right? There are really two motivations behind running the PK Inspire webinar series that we do. The first one, which is our primary goal, and that is to basically learn and inspire from each other. So we have created a platform where we brought in the top entrepreneurs, scientists, professors, engineers, economists. Today we have brought in a top physicist with you who will share their journey, how they got to where they are. And the whole idea is that all of the audience who are participating in these webinars, they get to learn and get inspired. And at the same time, don't make the same mistakes that they have made. And then, to achieve the goals that they are really after, they can actually follow the footsteps of them. The whole idea is that we bring you the top guys and gals, and you learn from them, learn from their history, learn from their journey to where they are today, and then hopefully you take some lessons out of it. At the same time, this becomes a very good networking platform as well. So for example, if you're a student and you're looking to move to your next level of education, you can get inspiration and guidance from these individuals as well. Similarly, entrepreneurs, and if you're just trying to go up in your career ladder as well, you can actually follow and learn from that as well. So basically, this is a platform. It's a global platform. Almost 60% of our audience comes from the US, about 30% comes from Pakistan, and then the global UK, Europe, and other places in the world as well. So we have created this. We want to make this bigger, and with your support and participation, hopefully we'll grow this to a much bigger platform. The phase two, or our second part of our opportunity here, is to develop more business opportunities between Pakistan and US and other countries where Pakistan can offer services. We already know that software industry and other services industry from Pakistan is really huge and multi-billion-dollar industry. And we want to help in that endeavor of increasing that opportunity for both in Pakistan as well as other countries as well. We have started to see some organic growth in that arena already. where a few of our projects from US have actually gone to Pakistan, and software got built from them and got delivered here. But our initial focus is basically creating the platform. And then as we get a little bit more mature, we will add more into the business opportunity and how we would actually develop the rhythm of the, building the more business cycles and whatnot. So just wanted to give you as to what our vision is and why we do this. With your participation, and if you spread the word, this will grow to a much larger global platform, and we will bring you more speakers, figure out a way to give you more, maybe more one-on-one guidance as well in future. But hopefully at this point, our goal is to actually make this a bigger platform for webinars so that our global audience can actually attend. Without further ado, there are two things that I do want to mention today. One of our key advisor within our PK Inspirers team is Jade. Him and his family actually run a very good nonprofit school in Pakistan called the Saya School. Last quarter at Cisco, Dawood Yamin got recognized among the top 10 Be the Bridge award recipient at Cisco. And we're very proud that he is a key advisor into PK Inspirers program as well. And then he's doing a wonderful job in addition to his day job and family, and motivating others, and also running the school in Pakistan. So really proud for Dawood to be him. We just wanted to give him a quick recognition so that we get inspired by such great activities amongst our members as well. Now, I just wanted to give a quick introduction of Irfan, and then hand it over to him to actually share his thoughts. As the agenda was that he will be speaking for 20-30 minutes, followed by question answers, which we would encourage you to actually enter into a Q&A panel, and then we'll take it up and present it to Irfan for answers. So Irfan is a quantum physicist, and with a serial entrepreneurial expertise and experience in Silicon Valley. He's also a founder of AIMS at Stanford, which really helps grow other startups and VC activity. He's a founder and CEO of Skin Deep Diagnostics, and then very interestingly, he also keeps his one leg in Pakistan at all times. So he's also a founding member of Portal to Pakistan, which is really a community and knowledge base for making progress in Pakistan, and he runs that from here. So Irfan, without further ado, I wanted to hand it over to you. I will make you a presenter so you can present your slides.
Okay, so share. And that's good?
It's really good.
Excellent. So first and foremost, thank you so much, Zahir and Sarah, for inviting me to give this talk. And thank you everyone who's been working behind the scenes at PK Inspire to put this together. And congratulations to Dawood for his award. And thank you everyone for tuning in. When I was invited to give this talk, I wasn't exactly sure what I'd be presenting. But with a little bit of back and forth, we kind of decided to cover my story, my background as quickly as possible and paint some broad brushstrokes and kind of leave you with the vision of how I view the world from a global point of view, even though I do come from Pakistan. So we kind of came up with this title together of Quantum Era, the Silicon Dragon, and the Jade, Jadugadh. And I apologize that all my slides are going to be just with a plain white background because like after a decade in Silicon Valley, you kind of just want to cut through everything and just see the facts and try to see things as clearly as possible. So this presentation, I wanted to give it within the framework of finding inspiration, or how I find inspiration and how I found that other people find the most interesting global aspirations or inspirations. And that's essentially through the lens of you read as much as you can, or you learn as much as you can about human history. And then you look back 50, 500, 5,000 years, and you kind of ask yourself this question of what has improved in humans' lives globally in that time period. And you kind of focus in on what those improvements have been. Then you flip and you turn around and you look forward the next 50, 500, 5,000 years. And you ask yourself, you know, in this arc, do I see any trends? What's left to be invented or created to continue to improve humans' lives? And focus on those projects. And usually that's where you'll find your best inspiration for places that are innovative tech hubs, like Silicon Valley in California. And always keep in mind that the world tends to more complexity over time. So whatever your idea is, if it seems too ambitious or too outside the box, always calm yourself with the knowledge that the world tends to more complexity over time. That's just biology. That's just physics. So I've seen a lot of positive information, a lot of positive changes in Pakistani media, both formally and informally over the last 10 years. And it's been really inspiring and uplifting to see this. But from my opinion, and this is just my opinion, like much of this talk, you know, all these topics, whether it's politics, science, technology, medicine, arts, economics, unless it's covered within this framework, this arc of looking back 50, 500, 5,000 and looking forward 50, 500, 5,000 years, unless it's sort of framed within that sort of, you know, perspective, then I wouldn't really say that Pakistan is out of the woods, but it's definitely headed in a promising direction. And that's kind of where I wanted to talk about today. So the reading list, so I was asked what my favorite books are, and I've got a lot of favorite books. Unfortunately, you won't see any of them behind me because I've moved around a lot in the last few years. And it's really hard moving around with books, so I just put everything on my Kindle. And that's what I would recommend to you. Is it's easy to buy, get it instantaneously, and you get the best value for money from ebooks. So I chose the top 5 books that are relevant to this talk that I could come up with. So number 1 on the list would be Homo Deus by Harari. It's his excellent follow-up to his first book, Sapiens, in which, in his original book, he looked back at the history, biological and social, the evolution of humans up until today. And with this one, Homo Deus, the follow-up, he turns around and looks into the future of where humanity is likely to go. So again, within the same framework that I mentioned above. So I highly recommend that book. After the Civil War by Robertson is a book that should be very inspiring to Pakistanis. It covers this traumatic period in American history. And it talks about some of the colorful characters on both sides of the war, some of whom were incredibly entrepreneurial and innovative. So as an innovator, it's really interesting to see that innovation in America started from a long while ago, and how a lot of inventions we take for granted actually came out of the Civil War. But specifically for Pakistanis, coming out of this 10, 15 year period of war and terror, where the country's kind of trying to find its place in the world historically, chronologically, technologically, socially, politically. So it's a very motivating book to see where America was back then and where it is now, and where Pakistan is now, and where it could be if it continues to push forward and seek inspiration and work together. Next on the list is Democracy by Condoleezza Rice. Now, I read this book purely to do my homework, just to cross it off the list. And in reading it, I actually found it was a really helpful book. So a lot of Pakistanis find it hard to understand the American point of view when it comes to foreign policy. And it's a little tricky to understand exactly what the thought process is. And so I would recommend this book if you want to have a global perspective and understand how America reaches the decisions that it does, especially from our perspective as Pakistani, unpopular decisions. And, that would help you better understand. And understanding is a step closer to solution. Next up is The Pentagon's Brain. This is an excellent book. It essentially provides a blueprint for how military funding in civilian research can actually lead to these magnificent technologies that improve civilian lives. For example, like the internet and the laser and other such things. So I think that this book should be, should be definitely required reading for anyone who's seeking to do research in the US. And it would be an excellent blueprint for a country like Pakistan to just copy and paste. Again, not getting into the politics of anything, just in terms of innovation and scientific research. The West and the Rest by Neil Ferguson. So I'm a big fan of Ferguson. I like all of his books that I've read. This book in particular is of deep interest for a country like Pakistan, because the idea that it conveys is that when you look through history, you notice that there were these seven, I believe it was seven, what he calls killer apps, or these deep areas of expertise that when countries excel at, then, for example, the Europeans were able to leapfrog the rest of the world and leave them in the dust. Or, for example, developing countries like Japan and South Korea and now China, when they excel at all of these, deep wells of expertise, they're able to push forward and get into the bucket of developed nation category. Whereas other countries that don't manage to excel in all of them kind of tend to perennially be left behind in the always developing category. So I'm not saying it's 100% truth, but I'm saying it's the sort of mentality, the way that would be nice to see Pakistanis thinking. And this is sort of the framework in which my thoughts have been developed over the last decade or so. And in the same vein, I think if you are a scientist, especially if you're from Pakistan, if you're able to, you should always try to be a polymath. So Pakistan doesn't have that much education. It's got loads of talent. And I think this talent is capable and should seek to gain expertise in different wells and not just your own. We have enough bandwidth for this, and we have enough talent. And an effort like PK Inspire is fantastic, because this means that to gain that knowledge, I don't have to start from scratch. It would be fantastic to reach out to expert economists and get their take and ask them questions so that you can get up to speed on those subjects as well, and vice versa. So I think Pakistanis in general, just from sort of listening to conversations that I've overheard from undergrads and young professionals, I think they should really gain deep insight into these success stories of economic growth in places like China, Japan, and South Korea, and learn the lessons of how they did it from a real economic point of view, not just fluff. And like in South Korea, that they used to talk about, there was a miracle on the Han River. I think Pakistanis should start this conversation that we need, or we want, a miracle on the Indus River. And that should become a buzzword or a buzz phrase, a miracle on the Indus River, and how do we bring it about? And at the same time, also look at lessons to be learned from failures. So economic downturn lessons in, for example, Argentina, Ottoman Empire, and Greece. And I'm a believer of the United Nations and nation states. I don't say go back to the time of empire, but you can learn lessons from all of these stories. So diving in, like, who is Pakistan? Who is Irfan? What's my story? And why am I the perfect person to have this insight and to give this overview? Well, I am from Karachi, Pakistan. I'm a Swiss Pakistani. My father was very Pakistani. He was an immigrant from Agra. And my mother was very Swiss. They met in England. And so spending time between the two countries, Pakistan and Switzerland, I truly understood what multiculturalism was and appreciated it. So there were large parts of Swiss culture that I appreciated and large parts of Pakistani culture that I appreciated. So, for example, in Switzerland, I loved yodeling. I loved the sound of it. I loved Swiss chocolate, Swiss cheese, and all of that. From the Pakistani perspective, or the Pakistani culture, I love the food, I love the spice, I love the chai. And for sure, Pakistanis tend to be a lot more entertaining character-wise than the Swiss do. So they have more of an Italian flair, if you know what I mean. And it's something that I want to get to, is that something that Pakistanis should just use and be comfortable with and not try to hide or put aside. That's when they thrive, is when Pakistanis live in their own skin. But play a clean game according to the rules. From Pakistan, I went to do an undergrad in physics at Imperial College in London, and I just missed Abdul Salam by 2 years. It was kind of upsetting that he wasn't there, and he saw pictures all over the place. So my mother was a huge fan of Abdus Salam. She always had the story of, she went for one of his talks, and here was this Nobel Prize winning physicist who was about to go on stage, and she was sitting across the aisle from him, and she saw that on the sole of his shoe, he had a hole in it. And so for her, this was just so inspiring that this man, this Pakistani man, he knows what life is about. You know, it's not about money and wearing the fanciest of clothes. It's about having passion and something to really, you know, work for, and money is just a means to get there. So it was kind of sad that I never got to meet with him. From there, I went to do a PhD in physics and quantum information in University of Rochester in upstate New York. And that happened essentially because my undergraduate advisor, his advisor was at Rochester. So I just kind of followed the flow and just went with the flow and just kind of went with the people's introduction and stuff. When I was at Rochester doing my rotation with the professors, I decided to work with John Howell. He was a young professor. I was his first student, and he was an excellent mentor. And together we put together this, this quantum crystal photonics laboratory from scratch. So in addition to all the publications that I had expertise in putting together a quantum lab from scratch. And because of this mix of results versus expertise, I was invited to Stanford to do a postdoc for this elderly professor who was looking to switch over and create a new expertise, new capabilities for quantum photonics research. And so when I went over there was nothing in place. So we had to order lasers from scratch, lasers that I never worked with before because it was a different, more ambitious project. And we put it all together in record time. I was working with an excellent graduate student called Steve Sansarn. And because we put it together so quickly, he was able to get publications out and graduate in a fairly quick amount of time. So I was very happy from a research point of view. But when I was at Stanford, in Silicon Valley, and already in my PhD, I had created a patent for key distribution using quantum resources. And so my mind was already in the phase space of products and application and impact. And in conversations with my professor, it was obvious that we wouldn't see any real products or applications from quantum for another decade. And that was about 10, 11 years ago. So I seem to have been about right in terms of the delay that I predicted. So from those conversations, and I was very well aware of the fact, I was keen of the fact that the professor was not so interested in applications. At that stage in his life, he just wanted to focus on pure research. So even though we were very talented people, but our mission statements kind of were diverging. And that happens in life, and you should be aware of that and try to move on in as pleasant a way as possible. So I found another postdoc in the BioX Center at Stanford again, where I worked with Chris Kontag, and he was my first mentor for entrepreneurship. He had done his own bio startup that did not deal with the FDA, but he had great advice and was very supportive. So in this new lab, I teamed up with an electrical engineer and a biologist. It was very multidisciplinary. And we started a brand new project with a dermatologist on skin cancer detection using these molecular probes. And so my insights were essentially from the point of view of a physicist who understands low light detection, photonic level detection, and also my interest in going over to the business school and design school and understanding what's the difference between technology and product. And how to put a pitch together and how to get startups off the ground, all the little tricks. So I was very excited to do this. It was a Stanford startup. We were going for, publications. We were getting, we were applying for patents. But what I didn't know at the time was that what we were undertaking was the single most ambitious startup that you can do in Silicon Valley. We were trying to cure skin cancer through early stage screening. And having to go through the entire FDA gamut and everything. And from a naive perspective, I just assumed that this is what Silicon Valley does. But the advantage for me at the end was that because our goals were so ambitious, what we ended up learning were the limitations of Silicon Valley that most people don't get to see in terms of entrepreneurship resources and expertise. So we got a really clear insight into the depth of how far this expertise can actually go. In addition to that, it was over, I just fell in love with entrepreneurship and impact. And so dabbled in one extent or another in all of these different fields. Now, I am a person who is driven by numerous passions. And this is something that wasn't very clear when I was younger in life. But as I get older and older, it's much easier to see your patterns. And so I've always been inspired by Renaissance men. And what that means is, men who are not, or people, whether they're men or women, who are not limited by one single definition of a subject, and who are brave and bold enough to go and try to become experts in multiple subjects and try to cross over and see if there are any interdisciplinary lessons to be learned or applications or insights. And so I find that a lot of academics and people out of academia get really scared about leaving their own subject area. And for good reason, because the world that we live in tends to be very pigeonholed and think in terms of pigeonholes, especially with the deep industrialization we see over the last couple of centuries, I guess. So you find a lot of pushback, and you've got to be really brave in finding people who will understand where you're coming from. And just always remember that if you're going for ambitious projects, naysayers often are just people who are scared that you just actually might be right. So always keep something like that in mind. So I've always been fascinated about thinking about space travel, humanist economics, sentient robots, cyborgs, evolution, things like that. And the last few years, more and more about humanist economics. So the 20th century was this conversation between communism and capitalism won out. But the story that it tells us about human beings is not that nice, which is that you can't really trust humans to do the right thing. You always have to have a system with the carrot and the stick. And I kind of find that in the last century, while that works very well for societies that are not socially evolved, as we're steadily heading towards the middle of the 21st century, we're entering a regime in which certain nations and countries have easy access to education. And so you've got this incredible growth in talent. You've got instead of a sparse availability of talent, you're now in a position where you have almost a commodity of talent. And so the economic system kind of needs to be upgraded to maybe, capitalism 2.0, 3.0, something like that. So these are ideas that I like to brainstorm and think about. My first love in life, just by the by, was football. And at some stage I outgrew that and decided to get more serious about how it can impact a country like Pakistan. But I still love to exercise and play around. And I think staying physically fit, advice to young people, would help you in your career, especially if it's ambitious, because it will help you go that extra mile. And of course, given my background, I've always been curious about what is wrong with Pakistan's economy, especially always on the flight back from Switzerland was always that question of why can I see no future for myself professionally in Pakistan, even though that's where my parents are. So that kind of dominated a lot of my thinking for the next, the next couple of decades in my life. So kind of going back into the bigger picture thinking in terms of quantum and quantum applications, I got interested in quantum because the next era in human technological evolution is not going to be artificial intelligence, it will be quantum applications. So you see these sort of, it's usually hardware inventions that give you these fantastic jumps in human interaction and overall economic productivity and performance. So while artificial intelligence is exciting, it's really interesting, my perspective, and again, all of this is my opinion, is that with quantum, what you're going to see are a whole new set of problems that can be solved that we could not solve before, whether these are problems we currently imagine, or once the technology comes about, these are problems we will discover that we can solve. We didn't even know that they were problems that existed, much like much of human history. So roughly divided, canonically, when people try to sell quantum applications, they sort of talk about computing, cryptography, and sensing. And roughly, to kind of dive a little bit into them, For computing, there's, of course, breaking cryptography, so cracking your crypto codes for the internet. There's simulation of objects, for example, in chemistry. So huge potential applications in simulating protein folding and things like that. And you can do this without any mathematical simplifications or approximations. It gives you an exact simulation of how the experiment would run. Exciting for artificial intelligence, for dealing with high rank tensors, which give you emotional subtlety. So right now, chatbots are not too emotionally subtle, they're not too convincing. And recommendation engines, for example, in Netflix, they're, it's a bit gimmicky. We all feel that way. But with quantum technologies, you can really create something that would truly touch you and inspire you, and hopefully will blow your mind. The challenges for quantum computing is error correction. So these are resources that are incredibly noisy just by nature. And theoretically, you need significantly more resources to clean up the signal than with the digital equivalents of anything. So that's the main challenge right now, is how do you find utility for these noisy devices that exist today? Because when the equivalent of the regime, when the first transistors or electronic transistors were created, they were very noisy and very hard to manage. Then moving on to cryptography, once quantum computers have hacked a lot of your crypto space, you can replace it with quantum cryptography, or to make your connections quantum secure. The challenge over there is that it's easy to do one-to-one, so it's easy for two people to be quantum secure, but it's very tricky to figure out how to do many-to-many. So if it's a million people trying to securely communicate with each other, for example, like with credit cards, that's a very challenging problem that is not really been solved yet. And the third major area is sensing. So can we drastically improve measurements, for example, in spectroscopy or metrology? And if you look historically, the largest applications, the largest number, and probably in terms of impact of applications for quantum are yet undiscovered. So for example, like with the laser or with the transistor, it was hard to imagine that transistors would be used in refrigerators or microwaves. So a lot of technology or applications that we can't even imagine. So I just presented the slide on the state of the field for quantum computing. So if this video is put online, people can come back, pause, and read over it. I'm just roughly going to talk about the two main divisions of where the efforts in quantum computing are at the moment. And it's mainly divided between optics or lasers and solid state. The advantage of lasers and optics is that your quantum resources are more robust to the atmosphere, but conversely, they're harder to interrogate or read in and read out. With solid state, they're much easier to read in and read out, but they also have more noise associated with them. So right now, groups like Google are more interested in solid state, specifically superconducting qubits, because manufacturing them has a lot of similarities to manufacturing current CPUs and other ASIC chips. So historically, if you look, it's not always the best performing technology that wins the market. It's almost always the most convenient technology, the cheapest one, the easiest to scale. So that's sort of the state at the moment. And this is what all the excitement is about with Google's recent announcement of quantum supremacy. The Silicon Dragon, why is China interesting? So as a biotech entrepreneur, what I saw in the limitations of Silicon Valley were that there was this shift towards this philosophy that software eats everything. So I kind of saw this shrinking sphere of impact in terms of what achievements were actually possible for startups within Silicon Valley, because all of the practical advice, almost all of it, most entrepreneurs are software based, Google, Facebook, PayPal, Angry Birds, things like that. And so expertise when it came to, for example, in my case, biotech was, far and few between, or few and far between. And the advice from traditional entrepreneurs would get you into trouble. So that's actually what happened with Theranos, is that here was a startup which, whatever reason, took startup entrepreneurial advice very literally and assumed that biotech was the same as, PayPal or Facebook. And you already see, some of the ethical issues that come up with some of the shortcuts that are taken with software startups. So I sort of saw this shrinking sphere of influence or impact. And again, with the thinking of looking back and forward within 5,000 years and the world tending towards complexity, if something is shrinking in one area, then it must be growing somewhere else. It's just physics. And so that's kind of what I found, is that you've got these other tech hubs developing all over the world, other places in the US. So if you are entrepreneurially driven, you don't need to come to Silicon Valley in California. You can do it anywhere you want to. It probably would be easier to do so because the cost of living and the cost of everything over here is reaching unreasonable limits for sustainability, in my opinion. And this seems to be a conversation that's going on about this. So from Pakistan's point of view, of all of these tech hubs, why China? Well, other than the fact that you have this incredibly friendly relationship with the country, China has developed itself over the last 20 years into the most sophisticated silicon fabricating facility on earth at scale. So in addition to other things which I'll quickly get into, you can see this in terms of the dominance of China for manufacturing of solar cells. They won the solar wars, so to speak. You can see this in the manufacturing of ASIC chips. So when you read stories about ASIC miners, Chinese companies like Bitmain have dominated an industry. And already a year ago, they wanted to branch out into artificial intelligence chips or chip making. So when the means of manufacturing is over there in China and the expertise for that is there, then of course that's where the innovation is going to happen, because that's where the brains are going to accumulate for those really hard problems. And you can see this when, the largest company the world has ever known, Apple, when its CEO, Tim Cook, says that when it comes to tooling expertise for silicon fabrication, in Silicon Valley, he'd be lucky to fill a room with experts, but in China, they're football fields. So that kind of gives you an indication of the scale for that one area, which is silicon. In my area, already more than 10 years ago, they had created the cheapest beta barium borate crystals for down conversion, and that was when they started to really explore other options of where they can produce. They wanted to climb up the value chain, and so. Moving on, so from my perspective, they already have leadership in quantum. So leaving aside the current experiments in quantum supremacy, there's a lot of excitement in the US, but most of that came about because 3 years ago in 2016, Chinese researchers created a quantum secure satellite uplink with Austria. And this was a huge milestone, massive milestone. And that really started the whole buzz in the US about it sort of seemed that that's when the field sort of woke up to this reality that they were being left behind. So we don't know exactly how much China has innovated over there, but you can see increasing number of publications in quantum AI, and AI. In addition to that, there's leadership in intellectual property and research across the board, not just in quantum or silicon. So you see this in biotech, you see this in human cloning. I'm not going to get into the ethics of this, but the capabilities are very clear. So increased number of intellectual property patent applications over there. And when it comes to questions like, copycat, it's fairly obvious that once China starts to have more IP to protect, then they will protect it, even from their own people. And when it comes to questions like democracy, that's beyond the scope of this talk. Let's just say that all countries initially are not very democratic. So the definition of democracy is up for debate. And finally, when it comes to China, they have supreme ambitions. So they don't view themselves as a developing country becoming a developed country. In their mindset, they were never colonized. So their story for themselves, their narrative, is within this context of a 5,000-year history in which, because of their culture and their hardworking ethic, they tend to attract innovation, attract research, attract the best brains. And so in one form or the other, they've either been the predominant civilization on Earth or amongst the predominant civilizations on Earth. So that's sort of built into their culture, which is a large aspect of how countries perform. When it comes to Pakistan and Pakistan's role with the CPEC, one thing to always keep in mind is that China is not looking for Pakistan to go into a financial trap. China needs Pakistan to succeed. They would love for Pakistan to be the poster child for CPEC so that they can go around the rest of the world and sell the Belt and Road Initiative, which they can't do if Pakistan has a poor deal. But at the same time, they're not looking to play both sides of the court. They really wish Pakistanis would wake up, be professional, and make some very interesting, bold proposals for the Chinese, including Chinese technology like quantum, like AI. So that would be my suggestion to young Pakistanis, is to think in those terms and to propose them to anyone that you happen to know in Pakistan or otherwise. Start thinking in these terms. How can we collaborate with the Chinese? And I would say an excellent example of success stories would be the JF-17, right? It's not the most sophisticated fighter in the world, and I'm not getting into geopolitics, but it's from a defense point of view or a practical point of view, it is the perfect fighter for a country like Pakistan. So Pakistanis clearly have loads of talent, which when they work with the Chinese, you can see these fantastic results. So the CPEC is a fantastic opportunity given where China lies in this, I guess, the pecking order of this global technical spiderweb of hubs. Where did the word, or where does Jade Jadugadh come from? And I was trying to come up with something creative for this talk. In discussions with Sarah and Zahir, we kind of were, paintballing various things, and everyone kind of seemed to like this, this sort of like economist style description of Pakistan as this sorcerer or magician. So I never set out to do Portal to Pakistan. I just wanted to be a physics professor. I wanted to settle down in a university in Pakistan close to family. That was my initial ambition when I started my PhD. But you do your homework and you reach out to people, and it was very clear that it was in decline. You can't do research. It was a horrible life. It's not a very, you can't support family. You won't live a happy life doing that. And the only solution was to solve the academic problem in Pakistan, which meant solving the entire government level issues, which I was not interested off the bat as someone who just wants to be a professor in physics. So having a physics background in Silicon Valley, wanting to have impact, my next thing was, well, to be close to family in Karachi. Karachi needs water. So let's work on desalination plants in Karachi. And very quickly you find out the technology is there, the business plans are there, the money is there, everything is over there. I got land that was offered to me in Port Qasim, but couldn't do anything because of the mafias. So because of the law and order situation, that's what held back entrepreneurship in Karachi. So that sort of started me down this journey of, where's the problem? And you go down the problem chain and try to find, if I fix this, if I loosen this up, then suddenly the valves open up and the water flows through. So fixed law and order in Karachi meant better governance in Karachi. Better governance in Karachi requires buy-in from the entire nation. So you need better governance on a national level. Arguably, the best governance system would be democracy, and that's where the Pakistanis were really going towards, heading towards. Democracy doesn't work unless there's an informed public. So it's not just people in a room putting their hands up. You've got these pillars that need to be in place for democracy. It's sort of like a balance. So through all of this, I started to have these online discussions and started to just share all of the entrepreneurial knowledge that I gained over here, anything that I learned for desal plants or anywhere else in Pakistan. I just wanted to put it up there so that any entrepreneurial minded person with spirit didn't have to start from scratch. They could just take what I got and move forward. And that's one of the first lessons that mentors over here teach you is don't do it from scratch. Talk to someone who tried and failed, learn from them, take that expertise, and then go forward. Save yourself time, be creative. Never, just because you're not an expert on paper, doesn't mean you can't gain expertise. So just go for it. Don't let anyone talk about, what your background is, this or that. Most entrepreneurs don't have any background in what they become experts in. So always remember this. You'll find some really funny things that, not the top VCs, but the second and third tier VCs will say. Ignore all of that. so through that process, I ended up creating an economist-like narrative for Pakistan to change the narrative, or get people talking in that sort of narrative of where do we fit in the globe. And from my perspective, I had hated history, I hated politics. It didn't make any sense the way it was taught in Pakistan, to me at least, and to the people around me. So what I saw was that when I started to put together my own objective history of Pakistan, there was a certain story that started to pop up, that Pakistan is a sort of country which always manages to accomplish things that it should not in any way be able to accomplish on paper when viewed from how the story is written on the top level. And that starts from its inception, from the birth of Pakistan. The British Empire, the largest empire the world had ever seen at the time, the sun never sets in it. No one thought that India would ever gain independence. And yet again, it did. And in addition to that, the South Asian Muslims gained independence for themselves, right? No one thought this would happen. The Muslim League summoned this exceptionally talented lawyer, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. And it's almost as if you pulled out this magic lamp, rubbed it, the genie popped up, and there was a miracle, and you had Pakistan. It's not a perfect country. No countries are. But you see the story again and again. From unlikely places, you have this incredible talent pop up. So the first Muslim Nobel Prize winner in physics, Abdul Salam, from Pakistan, out of nowhere. When you look in nuclear technology, whatever your politics are, Pakistan should not have been able to achieve that level of technical competence. They did. And the most visually easiest way to see it, if you were looking for a metaphor, is of course sports. Pakistanis invented the reverse swing, the dusra, reverse sweep. The fastest bowler in the world. For a while, it was the fastest century maker, half a century maker. So if you kind of look at the Pakistani playing style, when they're really in their element, right? They know the rules, they learned the rules, and then they play in their element, their own style, and they're comfortable, hardworking with each other. They really do manage to somehow pull out the genie of the lamp and conjure up miracles. So it's very unconventional and unorthodox from the point of view of the rest of the world. How it manages to do this, no one knows, unless you happen to be Pakistani and you kind of have an intuition of how it happens. So my take is that, why shouldn't this mindset, also this self-confidence, be projected into economics, democracy, science, technology, healthcare? So learn the rules, but then do it your own way. But of course, do it cleanly without corruption. So to wind this up, as a Pakistani, as individuals, what's the sort of call to action? What can you do moving forward? How do you guide your career? If you're involved in the country, if you want to be involved in the country, if you want to take more of a global stance and accept that you are Pakistani from Pakistan, for a country that's trying to find its footing in the 21st century, again, historically, politically, geographically, socially, technologically, innovationally, financially. So from my background, advice that I could give from my own success stories in my history is, as a scientist, always create world-class publications, whatever those may be. Create world-class publications. So go for quality in addition to quantity, but focus more on quality. And if you're unable to do it for whatever reason, find out what's the roadblock. Don't be limited by this tag of PhDs that other people try to put on you. We are creative people. We can solve anything, right? And PhDs tend to have the best people skills that I've seen. When they go into industry, there's this huge fear factor about work experience. You don't have work experience. It's not true. A PhD is a type of work experience, and go in with that confidence. So the PhDs that I've seen, they have performed exceptionally well within a few months of joining a company, and usually outperform their colleagues who are afraid about this lack of work experience. So never let anything get in the way. Call and try to create yourself DARPA type initiatives and discretionary funds. That's when really you're unlocking you're unlocking the creative potential in the country, in Pakistan. Vocalize the importance of basic versus applied sciences in Pakistan. There's a misconception, science is science. No, there's basic and applied science. In addition to that, support the humanities. Pakistan will not be a pleasant place to live unless you also have a robust support for the humanities. Go for moonshots. Moonshot means that if you succeed, you change the world. So of course, if you succeed, you change the world. But if you don't, you gain capacity and you go for another moonshot. And whatever your results are, never cook the results, but you can always change the story. You can spin it and try to find another theory that fits your results if they don't happen to match your original theory. So feel free to do that. That's what I learned really from some of the top performers in academia. But never cook your results. Never do that, ever. For entrepreneurship in Pakistan, it's a wide open field. Number one, education. It's what Pakistan needs the most. All this information is online. People are not learning it. So be entrepreneurial, learn about design thinking, and figure out how do you make it easy for people to gain this knowledge. And don't be afraid of knowledge. Don't be scared of it. Whatever it says, accept it, think about it, debate with others, but don't be scared of new knowledge. Water shortage, of course, Pakistan's suffering from a huge water shortage. Find out entrepreneurial ways to do that. And again, go down the problem chain and try to solve the problems. That's what entrepreneurs do. They solve whatever problem is in the way. They don't get scared by problems. Clean tech, wide open for clean tech. Again, with China, you've got this fabulous source to do partnerships in business for solar cells at great deals. I'm all for the third coal project, but it really should be a part of the mix and not the entire mix. And then, of course, try to get involved and create centers of excellence for artificial intelligence and quantum applications. How I can try to help is I can try to be involved, give feedback and pitches, so you can spitball a whiteboard with me. I know that my generation and above, from personal experience, find it hard to understand outside the box thinking. So I'm happy to try to do my best to fill that role and create connections with relevant individuals and groups. And it is very true that Pakistan is becoming a buzzword in terms of the next big thing economically, potentially. So there are opportunities there. I'm not giving any financial advice. I'm just saying what I'm hearing and seeing. And finally, to close up that loop, all of this, whatever you do from a global perspective, Pakistan needs to have a global perspective, think globally. So look back 50, 500, 5,000 years. How has humans' lives improved? Then look forward 50, 500, 5,000 years. And how can humans' lives improve? And how can that change happen within Pakistan or from a Pakistani with a Pakistani? And when you have your inspiration or inspirations, hopefully, protect them at all costs, because no one else will. And always remember that if your inspiration is incredibly ambitious, naysayers most of the time are simply people who are scared that you just might be right. So I hope that this has been helpful. I hope it's been inspiring. And I'm open to questions. So thank you for listening.
All right, Irfan, thank you so much. Sarah, if you don't mind, start with the Q&A.
Sure. Thank you so much, Irfan. This was really very inspirational. I was very, there were a lot of takeaways that I have noted down. We have quite a few questions coming into the Q&A window, and I'll go ahead and start with a few. So the first question for you is, Irfan, do you think quantum computing will make into consumer products like home computers in our lifetime?
Absolutely. In our lifetime, absolutely, yes. It might not be in the form of a desktop or a laptop, but via cloud computing already, it's becoming a part of the ecosystem. So yes.
Excellent, thank you. Another question is around collaborative ideas with Pakistani academia. Can you share some venues or platforms for collaboration between Pakistani academia with international universities?
This is an excellent question. This is where I myself got stuck when I was in my PhD trying to get involved and nothing really exists. I understand your pain. And there's nothing that still exists. So this is where we need to create these establishments. We need to solve this problem. I'm sorry.
That's what it is. Thank you. Our next question is around information and the information age we're living in. Democracy requires informed public. So the question is, how do we deal with misinformation spread using media? I mean, that's a problem we face in our everyday challenges. So any thoughts about that?
Yeah, so that's a big thing. If I could just go back and finish off the thought on the last question first.
Sure.
You'll find that academic institutions in America will not take Pakistan seriously. So I tried to create a biodesign group or branch at Stanford for Pakistan, Biodesign Pakistan. There already was a Biodesign India that exists at Stanford through which you had these startups come in and move off. But first of all, American institutions won't take that seriously from Pakistan. And it's not just because it's Pakistan, but from their experience, and it's true, Pakistanis tend not to coagulate and work well as teams with each other. I don't know what the reason is. It's something that we all need to think about, but you can see that in our sports team, and that happens in general. And when I did AIMS at Stanford, this was the biggest sadness and disappointment of my life almost, that when I established this group for entrepreneurial postdocs and senior researchers at Stanford, I had Chinese, I had Indians, I had Israelis, I had Spanish, I had French, I had like whatever nationality you can mention, they came and they partook and they participated. They went for leadership positions, they joined the team. There were maybe a couple of Pakistanis, and nothing against them personally, but they just didn't want to waste their time. Oh, no, it's your thing. It's not, you know, I'm not. So Pakistanis need to understand that you need to be a leader, and leadership means teamwork, right? It was a lot of sacrifice for me to create this group. So I would say look within yourself, see if other people are doing something, and see if you can work, if you can be in the support element as well. So sorry about that. I just had to give a little bit of insight into why these groups don't exist. And in terms of the follow-up question, which is, so this is
the misinformation in the media.
Misinformation in the media. So this is why I love Neil Ferguson. So he's actually written a book called The Square and the Tower, where he actually discusses this. When social media and the internet came about and everything went electronic, people were convinced that large groups like the Financial Times and BBC News and Wall Street Journal, these are going to die. We don't need them anymore. Then you started to have the propagation. So it was this shift in power towards the square, or the people, right? Then you started to have this proliferation of fake media, and everyone started to realize that what they're getting fed is garbage, right? So you kind of see this desire, it's just entrepreneurial. You see this need, this pain point. So it's only a matter of time before people start resubscribing to the Wall Street Journal, to BBC News, to Financial Times, or hopefully The Economist of Pakistan, or Business Insider in Pakistan, for curated news that they can trust. So brand, that's where brand is important. That's my opinion.
Thank you. There's a question about, how can the current government of Pakistan play a role in bringing back talent like yourself to the country?
I'm going to say something a little bit depressing, but everyone in my age, I'm 40 plus, everyone that I know my age who's reached the sort of levels that I have, they've given up on Pakistan, they've written it off. They won't trust a single thing that any Pakistani government does. So what the South Koreans did was that, so again, it's sort of unfortunate for me and my generation, but what the South Korean government did was that they went through this phase what Pakistan is going through right now, in which they cleaned up the taxation system. So they created a NAB-like organization and gave it this really cool modernistic building in Seoul. I know this from insider stories. When the building was created, and it seems a bit irrelevant, but it's not. When the building was created, people were all thinking like, oh, it's so modern looking, like South Korea, like we don't deserve, like who do they think they are? A lot of that. So a lot of similarities with Pakistanis, right? Like who do they think, like we can't, like what is this? But over time, when they saw that things started to get cleaned up, and they cleaned up corruption in a very intelligent way. So they didn't go and hobble the entrepreneurs. They didn't go kill the entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurs are simply smart people who are playing an old game. That was the old game. You need to convince them that, hey, if you want to not go to jail, you need to pay some penalty to convince the folks that, you've paid your penance, and you need to play this new game, this cleaner game with the new rules, right? So not only did they clean up the system for newer entrepreneurs to grow it, but they also allowed the old hats a chance to get back in, right? So that prevented their economy from completely stalling and falling on its face, right? It's, if the shock is too great, then the system will fail. In addition to that, right? So this gives confidence to researchers, right? I don't want to work in a corrupt place because, oh my God, when a nation is corrupt, the first heads to go are the intelligent heads, right? Anyone who could speak up against you, those are the ones who you'll try to cut off and throw to the side. And if you're intelligent, you know this, you see this, it's in history. So that's the first thing they did, was demonstrate that there's no corruption, right? Second thing they did was they created institutes like KAIST. So if you look at KAIST in Korea, they created this institute purely technical, where they give these incredible offers, competitive to US salaries. They offered them to young professors, young postdocs, young researchers. So come back to Korea, you won't have to compete to be a professor at Columbia, you know, suffer through all of that. Come back, you live in this brand new city, beautiful housing, you know, you'll be able to travel the world. You have a fantastic pay package, right? So that's, you know, those are the stories that Pakistan needs to look into and reproduce, is make it attractive. And it'll be hard to attract top talent, I think. If someone's an established archaeologist sitting in Yale, why would they come back? It's too hard a risk. So, but conversely, we are 20 years on from the Miracle on the 100. So we now have telecommunication. So find creative ways of bringing them on board. Make them consultants. Make them part-time professors at Qaid-e-Azam or Karachi University, right? Make them give like Skype presentations or something like that, and give them something in return. Give them some money. Money is still it's a good motivator. So I hope that helped. But
thank you so much. We are at the top of the hour. Zahir, we have a few more questions lined up. I think it's possible for Irfan to reply to them offline. Is that possible through our series?
Absolutely, but I don't see, Irfan, if that's okay for you, if we can go over maybe 5 more minutes and answer all the questions. You don't
sure,
mind?
I'm available, so no worries. Yeah.
So thank you, Irfan. So our next
I will make
question
myself available for you guys.
We really appreciate your time. So the next question was around the talent pool. Could you briefly touch on the talent pool, the entrepreneurial mindset, and the work ethics of the current 30-year-old and under in Pakistan?
So I see there's a shift. The 30-year-old and under in Pakistan is a lot more optimistic, and they have a lot more of a global perspective of where Pakistan needs to be. So that's very different from my age. The younger generation, they want change. They don't want another round of Pakistan ek nazuk more se guzar raha hai, right? They don't want that. So it's very optimistic. In terms of entrepreneurship, there are many theories about why Pakistanis are so entrepreneurial, right? We're rule breakers. There's a joke about that, that, you know, the Americans went to the moon, and they thought they were the first, and then they looked around the bend and they saw there was a Chinese flag, and they were like, oh, how did you, you know, so they went to the Chinese, how did you get here? Said, oh, we stood man on man, right? Teamwork. They said, oh, that makes sense, you know, okay, so, you know, congrats, you're the first ones here. And then they saw in the distance the Pakistani flag, and they said, you know, how, you know, so they went over to the Pakistanis and said, how did you get here before the Chinese? And they said, oh, we're Pakistanis, we break all rules. So it's a joke that my mother used to love telling me, but it can be used in a bad way and a good way. The good way is we challenge everything. We challenge rules. We question everything. It could be that Pakistan was created with deep pockets of necessity, and necessity is the mother of innovation. But my take is that in addition to that, Pakistanis have this, they just enjoy finding other ways of doing things. They get bored. And so from that perspective, I think Pakistanis have this natural talent to understand and figure things out and always question things and be like, really, is it this, is it that? And it comes across in the West as impertinence. But if you grow up in Pakistan, you just understand that they're trying to keep themselves amused with the subject while they're questioning it. So if we can cater to that, I do see deep talent pools that exist. I saw them in my generation, and I saw them go on to do great things. But unfortunately, I do not have direct connections with 30-year-olds or under within the sciences in Pakistan, other than whatever I've managed to maintain or create through Portal to Pakistan.
Okay, thank you so much, Irfan. And I guess our last question is, in your estimation, with first things first in mind, what are the changes needed to help set up industries in Pakistan, especially in the short term? Did that come through?
Yes, yes, yes. It's a it's a heavy
Okay.
question. That's a very good question. That's first things first. What is required to bring industry into Pakistan? It's a very big question. It depends on whether you're talking about local entrepreneurship or foreign industry. No matter what, you need to bring in investment. No matter what, I would say that's the first thing you need to do is attract investment. Because if you're attracting investment, that means you're convinced the investors that this is a good business climate. So if you create a good business climate, convince the investors to come, you will have industry growth. So I would say a good litmus test is, are you attracting investors? And particular investors from Japan, the US, established investors who have grit. So that
Okay.
was a very short answer, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. I think, Taha, you have one question that you want to ask live?
Yes, I do have one question, Mr. Irfan. How far and long do you think China's dominance and the notion of being the Silicon Dragon will last? And is it particular that for Pakistan, especially in this economic boom, is it the tip of the iceberg for their economic stability?
Wow, so that's another excellent question. So you're kind of asking me to look inside my crystal ball and sort of guess what's going to happen. I love the United Nations. I love the concept of the global village, and I seem to hear that same narrative out of the Chinese in general. Whoever I meet, they love the idea of the global village. So I think what they're looking for is to dominate, perhaps not all technological sectors, but this one. And quantum is at the top of the list because it's one of the key technologies for the next century. I see, but there's a lot of unknowns. So for example, the reserve currency of the world is in US dollars. Mm-hmm. So the way that the US kind of plays it is that we want a rules-based economy or rules-based world system. But it's easy to say if you are the casino, because the casino always wins and then decides how much not to win. So these are the sort of questions depending on how they play out. But the mistake that I see happen in the US and in the West quite a lot is that they talk of the Chinese still from a colonial era perspective, as if the Chinese are not listening, they're not intelligent, they don't read, that they're only technologists. But from what I see coming out of China, they have thought through all of the issues, including the issue of the large local debt that exists. So on one hand, you do have what I see as a shrinking innovation ecosystem in Silicon Valley. So for me, what I'll be looking out for is to see how quantum grows in Silicon Valley, how they manage to take in talent within and without Silicon Valley. So the recruitment protocols, I think, in Silicon Valley are a telltale sign of a decaying. So it's headed in the wrong direction. So I would say that that's what I would be looking for to see how long the dominance would last for. But the way things are currently going, I would guess that China would probably dominate for the next 100 years and beyond. They're going to be one of the major players. So I don't see them playing the sole superpower. I think everyone in the world wants us to move out of that era. That's such a 20th century way of seeing things. We want to move into United Nations, where the United Nations has an army, right? It's a true global democracy. And even within that perspective, I think the Chinese want to be a global player. So in one way or the other, they will dominate over the next 100 years. And they're not going to give up because of one hurdle here or there. They didn't in the Great Leap Forward. That was a huge hurdle, a huge misstep. And I don't see them giving up with any minor hurdles. They are being very, very creative at the moment.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
And you see this in the way that Tim Cook deals with China and You see this in the way Elon Musk gives great, treats them very preferentially, gives them a lot of respect. And also you see this in the way that the stories that I've heard of people who visited China often come back, and, apparently the Chinese don't see Tesla as very exciting, since that's something they've already done. They've electrified their motorcycles and their cars. So they sort of see America as lagging already in some respects. So we live in a very interesting world. And I'm hoping that within the next few months, not the next few years, Pakistanis, for the first time in history, will be able to take out their passport and say, yes, I'm Pakistani. I get this, no one else does. So fingers crossed, hopefully.
Fingers crossed, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I believe we are going towards the end. I would just like to thank our sponsors, Nets International, a global partner for enterprise IT infrastructure and service provider network solutions. Please check them out at netsinternational.com. Also our other sponsor, Edbon, the developing STEAM technology content to disrupt the education system by making latest technologies and entrepreneurship a part of school curriculum. Also check them out at theedvolution.com. And finally, Mr. Irfan Khan, thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to enlighten us with so much useful and inspiring information. It is very much appreciated. Now, a big thank you to our attendees for taking the time to listen and to take part in this month's inspirational session. We ask that you please help us with your feedback. It is always appreciated. And finally, on behalf of PK Inspires, thank you all again for joining us, and may you go out today and make your mark on the world by being an inspiration to others. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.